Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? I hope you're all well. I'm going to continue with triangle stuff. Now, this stuff, I want you to take your time with it. And another big thing I want you guys to do is as I go through these calculations, I want you to try them too. So the one thing that can be a little tricky with this stuff is putting it into your calculator. So if you don't put it in your calculator right, it's obviously you're going to get the wrong answer, which, yeah, that makes complete sense. I get that. But at the same time, guys, you need to do this, and it's going to come up in grade 11, so that's what I'm saying. So please follow along, and I'm going to be going through like a lot of labeling stuff for you guys. So just so you understand what each thing is, so we're going to just do some labeling at first. I'm going to introduce you to a formula, and then we're going to do some examples. Okay, so that's what we've got going for today. And yeah, so let's just get right into it. So, as I said, intro to trig. So, trig means triangle measurement. Okay, so we've kind of already looked at some of the sides when it comes to similar triangles, but now we're not going to have similar triangles. We're going to be dealing just with information. So we're going to have angles and we're going to have side lengths. Sometimes it's just side lengths. Sometimes it's just angles. Not actually just angles. And then we'll use them together to find what we need to look for. So we use trig to calculate lengths of sides and measures of angles and triangles. So as I said, one place where this is used a lot is carpentry. So if that is something that you might be interested in, might be stuff you're going to have to need to know, okay? Because I remember my cousin's boyfriend, he took a lot of time off school after high school, and then he went back, and he's like, I want to do carpentry, went to school, and then he had to do SOHCAHTOA, and this is what we're doing, SOHCAHTOA. And he was just kind of like, oh my god, I need help. So yeah. Might as well learn it the first time, and then one less thing to worry about in the future, right? Okay, so right triangle terminology. So now when I start saying these words, you're gonna know what I mean. Okay, so there are three sides to a right angle triangle. And by the way, like it says right here in bold, we're only dealing with right angle triangles. Okay, next year is when you guys will be dealing with non-right angle triangles, okay? So how do you know it's a right angle triangle? It's got that little square in the corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this. So what I mean by that is there's a square right there. Okay, I can't get it. Anyways, so this is what I mean by that little square in the corner. This tells me that it's 90 degrees, okay? So the hypotenuse, the short form is hip, HYP, just so when I start babbling on and I am writing stuff down, I'll just write HYP and you know what I mean. It's the side across from the right triangle, okay, or the right angle. That's what I should have wrote. Okay, so where's my right angle? It's right there. Okay, we can see that. And it's always, always, always the longest side. Okay, hypotenuse is always the longest side. So that's one way that you guys can check your work at the end, is to see if that longest side, the side across from the right angle, is the longest number. Because if you were to say this number you get as like 16 and this one you get as 18, it's going to be wrong. Okay, so you guys need to watch out for that. Just one way to look at it. Okay, so we know this side now, the longest side across from the right angle, is called the hypotenuse. Okay, so another one that we have is called the adjacent. So the adjacent, the short form ADJ, just, you know, pretty straightforward. It's the side closest to the angle of interest. Now, another way of looking at it is it's called, or it touches the angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy this triangle because it's going to be the exact, we're going to use it twice. No. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to put this. So as you can see here, it says the angle of interest. What on earth does that mean? Well, what we're going to be dealing with is if you were to look at these triangles, you can see that there's 3 different spots that there can be angles. We know that there's this spot. That's our right angle. We know that's 90 degrees. So we're actually not going to even take that one into consideration. There can be an angle here, or there can be an angle here that we are going to be working with. Okay? So yes, but I kind of said that wrong. There's going to be angles there. It's just a matter of which one we're dealing with. Okay? Sometimes we deal with both. But there's always going to be an angle of interest, which is super important, guys, okay? So, if my angle of interest is right here, okay? So if we're dealing with this angle, then that means my adjacent side is the side closest to it or the side that touches it, which means this side is my adjacent. Okay, because you can kind of see it as this angle is touching that arm there. So that's my adjacent side. If my angle of interest is this angle here, then this is my adjacent side. Okay? Now this is why some people have a hard time with trig. If you can kind of get that straight through your head, you should be okay. But you need to know it really depends on which angle we're talking about. So, hypotenuse, longest side. Adjacent, the side that touches the angle. Because the angle of interest, I should say, sorry. Okay. Let's add that in. Because there is still an angle right here. We just don't care about that one right now. Okay, so then the opposite, short form OPP, it is the side across from the angle of interest. So across from it. It doesn't touch whichever one we're talking about. Okay, the angle of interest. So, oops. No, that's too similar to the other color. I know I'm overthinking it today. Sorry, guys. No, it's cool. Okay. So opposite is opposite the angle of interest. Well, if this is my angle of interest here, which you guys know, opposite is there. Okay? Because if you take a look, see? Opposite. And what I mean by it doesn't touch that side, well, if you look at this side here, this angle touches this side and that side, not the bottom side. So that's what I mean by that. So that means for this guy down here, it touches this side, the hypotenuse. It touches the adjacent. So that means it's opposite has got to be that other side that we haven't even looked at yet. So that's my opposite. Okay. Guys, this stuff is super important. So I'm going to go through these next little few examples with you and what I do recommend. So look, all of these different examples. There's lots of examples because I really want to get the point across. Is as I'm going through these examples, do it. Like answer it like we would in class. Okay, maybe pause the video or something. just to see if you guys can figure it out, and then see if you got it right, just because I want you guys to be able to make sure that you have this. And if you don't, obviously it's going to be very difficult for you guys to figure it out later. Okay, so I hope, just take your time, okay guys? So in triangle XYZ, identify the hypotenuse, the adjacent side, and opposite for angle X. So that means, like I said here, angle of interest. Angle X is our angle of interest for this question because it's identifying it. So that means we're going to label it with respect to X. Okay? So with respect to this guy right here. So what is our hypotenuse? Well, hopefully you guys can recognize right away that it's our longest side, right? It's that side there. So our hypotenuse, I'm just going to throw in. So the way that you could do it is you can use XZ or you could use Y. It doesn't matter. Okay? Oops. Or you can use Y, right? Because remember, if we label it, we always label across. Y, X, Z. Okay. What is our adjacent? Well, our adjacent is the one, it is the side closest to the angle of interest. It touches the angle. Okay, so it touches the angle. That means, did I use blue? It's going to be this guy here, right? Because here's my angle. There's the angle, and it's touching that side, okay? So that means my adjacent is side Z. Last but not least, opposite, obviously the one that's not touching it, X in this case, okay? So it is, if you find, hypotenuse is straightforward, okay? Hypotenuse you should be able to label right off the bat. Opposite tends to be a lot easier than the word adjacent. I don't know, I think maybe because in everyday talk we use that word more. I don't know. But whatever floats your boat, okay? Okay, so let's do it again. In XYZ, identify the hypotenuse, adjacent side, and opposite side for Z. Sorry, guys. Now we're doing Z. Okay, so our angle of interest is this one here. So we need to label the hypotenuse, the adjacent, and the opposite with respect to this angle here. Right away, hypotenuse is going to be the same thing. We know it's the one across from our little box there. So if I label these again, I'm just going to do the little labels because they're easier. My hypotenuse is side Y. Again, as you can see, those are the same, right? Okay, adjacent, like we said, let's do opposite actually. Opposite's easier. Opposite is the guy that's not even touching it. So this guy here, right? Directly across from it. So my opposite side is side Z. Meaning, process of elimination, my adjacent side is side X. Now, as you can see, in this case, the adjacent sides are different, right? Because the angle of interest is different. And that's okay. Okay, guys? So you have to be very, very careful. Okay, so label the hypotenuse, adjacent, and opposite side for each marked angle. So let's zoom in. I'm just going to use those short forms. Marked angle, what's the marked angle? Well, that means it's that line there, okay? You're going to see it with like this, or you might see that symbol. It's called theta. It's just a Greek symbol that's used, okay? You could even see X, Okay? I don't know. There's so many different options. So just so you're aware, it will be marked though. The question will tell you which angle. Okay, so hypotenuse, right away, we know it's this guy here. Perfect, okay? What is our adjacent? It is the one that is touching the angle of interest. So that's my adjacent. And this is my opposite. Because it is opposite the angle. Okay? See, that wasn't too bad. Okay, let's do it again. Here's my angle of interest. Here is my right angle, so that means this is my hypotenuse. My angle of interest, that means this is my adjacent because the adjacent touches it, meaning the other side has to be opposite. Last but not least, here's my angle of interest. Here is my square. Opposite my square is my hypotenuse. Angle of interest, that means this is my adjacent. And this is my opposite. So, as I said, guys, I recommend you guys doing some of these questions without me. Like, just pause the video, try it yourselves. Okay, you have the paper in front of you. Hopefully, if not, you're going to have to write it down. And then you guys can check your answers. Okay, that's just taking it upon yourself. It shows initiative. The only one this is going to benefit is you. Okay? So, what I'm going to do for this next section, I'm just going to go through them. Like, I'm not even going to really talk about them. I'm just going to put in the letters. Okay? Like, I'm just going to do hypotenuse, adjacent, opposite. Okay? Just save some time. So, again, this would be a great opportunity for you to pause the video, go through them, and see if you got them right. I wish I could like pause the recording. I don't think I can. No, I can't just pause the recording. Okay, so angle of interest is right there. That means this is my opposite, this is my adjacent, and this is, I lied to you, that's my opposite. Oof, that's my hypotenuse. See? Can get you. Okay, across, that's my hypotenuse. That's my angle of interest. That's my adjacent. And that's my opposite. Anyways. Okay. Angle of interest. Okay. Hypotenuse. Adjacent. Opposite. Hypotenuse. Adjacent. Opposite. Okay. Hopefully that works. Okay. Trig ratios. So, these are the equations of which we're going to be using. So these are the three primary trig ratios. So for the sine, there's three of them, sine, cos, and tan. And these take into play the sides of the triangle of which we are using. So the sine ratio is when we use the opposite and the hypotenuse side. Pardon me. Okay. So its equation looks like this. Sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So if we go back up, blue, yellow, blue, and pinkish. So yellow we used as hypotenuse. And then we kind of used the pinkish color for opposite. Right? Yeah. Okay. So to find the angle, so the theta, so this is the angle of interest. Okay? So to find that angle in particular, we need to take the opposite side and divide it by the hypotenuse side. Okay? For the cosine ratio, we'd use the adjacent side with the hypotenuse side. So again, we'd be looking at our angle of interest because we're going to determine the sides based off the angle. And we're going to do our adjacent divided by our hypotenuse. And then our tangent ratio, we have our opposite, across from our adjacent. Now, depending on the triangle, depends on what information it can give us. That's why there's these three different equations. So, depending on the information that we're given, that's why it depends on which one we use. Okay? So, one thing that we can remember is this thing called SOHCAHTOA. The sine ratio, hence the S, goes with my opposite and my hypotenuse. So sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. That's what SO means. Sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Oops. Cosine, cos, is adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, and that's where the ka comes from. So SOHCAHTOA. So once you realize everything that you have, and then you realize what you have to find, you determine which angle you need. Okay? And then last but not least, same idea for tan. Tan, opposite, and adjacent. Okay, guys? So we're going to get into some examples with sine. I'm going to do that in the next video. I just don't want it to go off for too long because this is a lot of information. So I'm going to carry on in the next video.